entertainmentbuddha.com.
Hey now everyone, and welcome back to a brand spanking new episode of Star Wars Time. Woohoo! It's Matt and Nick, and we're back to talk all things Star Wars. And boy, oh boy, Nick, do we have two major Star Wars news items that came out this past week that we're going to spend a little time talking about. So without further ado, my friend, I say we get right into it. And like I kind of teased, we got two major announcements coming right out of Star Wars Central, which is, Disney and Lucasfilm. And the first was that we are getting a brand new Star Wars trilogy, which is freaking amazing. And we're also getting that live action TV show that we've heard about for years. I mean, this live action TV show dates back to the Lucas era, where, I mean, even he was talking about doing one, and nothing could ever get done. It was talking about it was going to be potentially set in the underworld of Coruscant and kind of focus on the gangsters, the bounty hunters, this, that, and the other thing. And it just kind of went away when the sale happened, because I think at first Disney, they knew what they bought, and they knew they needed to get started on the new Skywalker trilogy to kind of revitalize the franchise, and then all the Star Wars story. So they probably left a lot of the side stuff behind. But this week, as we found out, Nick, they have all sorts of plans that I don't think most of us saw coming.
I mean, this is the biggest news about Star Wars that we've had since the acquisition.
Since the sale, right?
Yeah,
I mean, since
much.
the sale and announcement of a new trilogy.
Yeah, so, I mean, every Star Wars fan has kind of been, we're all super pumped about what's happening now. We have the standalones, we have the continuation of the Skywalker saga, but we all want to know, what's going to happen next. Because, we have 2 movies left for Skywalker saga, for this trilogy at least. And then we don't know what's going to happen after that. We don't know if we're going to continue following Rey and Kylo, or, whoever's left at the end of Episode 9. Or is the Skywalker saga going to end right here? Is this going to be the end of it? Now we know for sure that we have another trilogy guaranteed. We know that it's not going to be based around Skywalker saga characters. Because in the announcement, they told us, it was Disney and Lucasfilm that told us that Rian is going to be creating a completely new cast of characters from a completely separate corner of the galaxy, I believe is how they put it in the article. So, yeah, right here. Johnson will introduce characters from a corner of the galaxy that Star Wars lore has never explored before. So this brings up a lot of questions, I mean, is a movie that is going to be completely based around possibly new events, completely new characters, and in completely new locations, is that going to resonate really well with fans? And then the second question is, what timeline are we talking about? Because everybody knows that, all of the Skywalker saga has happened within a, roughly a 30 to 40 year period of time. Between, well, actually it's probably closer to 60 now. But we could go back to Old Republic days. We could go forward into the future, just rocket way ahead past Luke Skywalker, and then go into the future and see what's happening there. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity for growth, for expansion, for everything within this new trilogy. And dude, it's fucking crazy that this is happening before The Last Jedi is even out in theaters.
So if you didn't get the news earlier in the week, basically Disney has said that Rian Johnson did such a damn good job on The Last Jedi that they are fully committed to him and his team creating a brand new trilogy, which, as Nick said, it's bananas, because the movie's not out yet. I mean, they may love it, but who knows what fans are going to think. And I know that's a moronic statement. We know what we're going to think. I mean, if the suits like it, there's a good chance that the fans are going to like it. I mean, we're going to like it anyway, but the guys and the girls that are putting money into it, they love it enough to just say, you know what? this guy did such a fantastic job on this one movie. He followed our edict, right? He played by the rules while also telling a great tale and just making a very fun and rewarding collaboration type of experience with that. We're going to go ahead and give him 3 more movies. And as Nick said, we don't really know jack shit. We don't know what time period, this, that, or the other thing. So, Nick, before we get into the time period discussion, because I think that's the most interesting, at least to me, the one, where is this going to be set? What did this news give you in terms of confidence for The Last Jedi? I mean, I think we've kind of both been talking about that this film has potential to be special, but now with this revelation, I mean, does it not feel like this could be maybe one of the most unique Star Wars movies and possibly in the end one of the best, one of the top 3, you know, the Mount Rushmore type of films?
Yeah, I mean, coming into this, I was definitely hyped for The Last Jedi and stuff like that. I mean, there's a lot of really good story threads that are happening within this new trilogy. But to hear that Disney just straight up gave this dude what could potentially be, I mean, just think about the amount of money that a trilogy in itself could make. I mean, this new trilogy is going to make close to $5 billion in the theaters, if not more. It's going to be close. So they're basically giving Rian Johnson a trilogy of films that could be worth $5 billion. And they're just saying, they're not even giving him story direction. Like they said, Rian will do amazing things with the blank canvas of this new trilogy. So they're like, you do it. You create whatever you want to create. And to put that kind of faith in Rian Johnson after what they saw in The Last Jedi, that makes... I
mean, he hasn't made a cent for them yet, people.
Yeah.
Mind you, I mean, yeah, he's going to make $1 billion easy. But mind you, he hasn't made a cent on The Last Jedi yet. And they, more or less, like Nick said, hell, the money he's going to produce for them, they're pretty much giving him probably $500 million, if not more, maybe $750 million in money to make this trilogy, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because I bet these movies on the low end are going to be $150 million to create.
Yeah,
on the low end,
without a doubt. So, needless to say, that my expectations for The Last Jedi have skyrocketed. I mean, like they were high, but I mean they've gone.
Well,
higher.
Read that, because you're exactly right. I mean, they were already high for people like us and anyone in Star Wars Nation, but. Now, I think the pressure had to have been great on Ryan's shoulders, period. But now that Disney just made this proclamation that literally says, I mean, and I'm paraphrasing, but it literally says, this guy did such a fucking great job. We just gave him the keys to the kingdom.
Yeah, because if this new trilogy happens, I mean, we know.
So think about now. Read the tweet from Rian Johnson.
So. After the announcement, Johnson put out a tweet. It says, obviously, I hope you like The Last Jedi, but man, now I really hope you like The Last Jedi. I mean, yes, obviously. I mean, what will happen? I mean, this is an unthinkable thing, right? You know, in today's Star Wars kind of universe, to think, like, what if this movie comes out and it only gets, like, I mean, a travesty to us would be, like, if it got, like, an 85 on Rotten Tomatoes or some shit like that. Like, what happens if this movie comes out and people are just like, you know, it's not really that great. It's okay. You know, it's good. But
I think that's a big what if. I mean, it's definitely potential. I mean, and I can attest to this because I've now finished the prequel leg of my rewatching of the saga before The Last Jedi. And Nick, again, I mean, I was just watching Revenge last evening. I don't want to go too far down this because I know I just always come off as this big prequel hater. But, dude, I mean, that movie is fucking bad. I mean, bad. The opening is so cardboard-like. The acting, the movements. I mean, at that point, it's almost like the cast just fucking threw in the towel, dude. I mean, I think all of them were like, you know what? Fuck. This script we keep getting and the lack of direction, who gives a shit? Let's just act it as cardboard and as generic and as fake as we can.
Yeah, it was...
Because it's fucking horrible, dude.
It left a lot to be desired, for sure. I mean,
I'm talking from the opening segment all the way to when Anakin gets back and has his first dream about Padme. I mean, it's a fucking disaster. It looks so bad. I mean, the acting is, I forgot that one when the fucking Chancellor's sitting in his throne.
Oh yeah, God.
And he sees like Obi-Wan like knock down a battle droid, and he goes, yeah. It's like, what the fuck is this, man? All right. Anyways, so yeah, I mean, it's Jesus. I mean, I can't believe if I was Rian what I'd be feeling right now. I mean, like I said, he probably already feels sick to his stomach knowing that he has a billion people basically wanting and hoping that his movie kicks ass.
See,
now he has to come through not only on that, but now on a massive project that, like you said, is basically wide open.
Yeah. So how do you think this went down? So we know that there was a director change on episode 9. So do you think that they had it planned already to give him his own trilogy and they didn't even approach him about it? Or do you think that they did approach him and he said, no, I really don't want to do that, but then kind of presented them with something else? Like he showed them like, I don't want to do episode 9, but I have this idea. Like
that's a good way to think of it. I think it was, and I'm going to go off this line, and this is coming from I think Kathleen Kennedy here. We all loved working with Rian on The Last Jedi. He's a creative force, and watching him craft The Last Jedi from start to finish was one of the great joys of my career. Rian will do amazing things with the blank canvas of this new trilogy. That is a very, very powerful statement from a very, very powerful Hollywood producer. I mean, this lady has worked with George, Steve on some of the biggest movies out there. Mm-hmm. And for her to say that this is one of the greatest joys of her career, working with this man, I think, Nick, it was probably... It might have even been during principal photography and when she, maybe made a set visit or heard reports from the set and saw the dailies. I think maybe then they probably started talking about, you know what, we've got a special guy right here and we own this Star Wars license and we can go so many different ways. We have the Star Wars stories, the standalones, the Skywalker saga. Why not let someone like this who is so creative, so down to earth, and just gets the franchise and gets the way we want things done? I think that's the most important thing. Let's see what he can do. So I don't think they always had this trilogy planned for Rian, but I think after hiring him for Last Jedi, seeing how he crafted that project and how he executed it, I think at that point they're like, we can't let this guy go. He needs to make a bigger stamp on the Star Wars universe. And I do think, back to your point, I think that's why he definitely was not considered for 9, period. When he was like, yeah, I'm not doing it. He's like, there's no way. I mean, it ain't going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a hard thing to kind of wrap your mind around.
They've probably known about, what do you think, 3 months they've been talking about this? 4 months?
Oh, yeah.
5 months?
I would imagine that they had a good idea of it when they announced JJ as episode 9 director. They definitely knew.
They'd already known. I already think that it had been months in the books like this was going to happen.
Yeah.
And again, that's probably why Rian did not take on 9, because when you think about it logistically, it would have made sense for him to just continue.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, they've probably known for a while, or at least they knew, and they didn't really tell Rian. They were like, we're going to give this dude something. Like, he's going to get something else. This isn't going to be his only thing in Star Wars, but they were just trying to figure it out, because we can remember, I mean, if you go back, a while ago, probably a couple months ago, 3 months ago or so, we were talking about Bob Iger discussing the state of Star Wars and then, where it's going to go from here and then what's on the slate, at least at that time, for the future. And he said that we for sure have Star Wars up until 2020. So if you play that out, that we have this movie this year, 2017, we have Last Jedi. Next May, in 2018 May, we have Han Solo. 2019 December is going to be episode 9. And then 2020 was that unannounced, or still yet to be.
It should be the last somewhat announced standalone, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's going to be one of the standalone films, whether it's the Obi-Wan Kenobi, which has been like, kind of in the works now that we know that. It could be Obi-Wan in 2020. But now we know. So we have those 3 movies guaranteed. But now we know we have a full trilogy coming after. So we're probably not going to get this Rian Johnson trilogy until at least 2021. So for everybody who's listening, who's like hyped and they're like, oh man, I can't wait to get into theaters again to see this Rian Johnson trilogy. It's going to be dope. I mean, you probably got 4 years.
I think you're right. I think it, what screws the flow up is Han Solo, right? Because if they're keeping that in May.
Yeah, that's what I was saying is like the Solo being in May.
It needs to move. It needs to go to December.
It does. Like Star Wars is now a December release. Like, trying to stick to the old George Lucas way of releasing it in summer is just not. It's not
it's
what
failed twice at this point, dude. I mean, The Last Jedi was supposed to come out in May.
Yeah,
last May. I mean, we at this point in time we were already to have seen this movie that we're talking about.
Yeah, so it's to me, it's just that's a relic of a bygone era. Drop the summer releases when we drop.
Nice nod to the franchise there, people. That's one of Nick's deep cuts. So we didn't get that.
Exactly. So see, you gotta keep up with us, people. But
we know our shit.
When they removed George from the franchise, when Disney bought it, like they should have just said, we don't have to do things his way anymore. And if we find success in a different area of time for releases, then that's what we're going to go with. And
dude, I think the holiday release is fantastic.
Yeah, it's great.
Because everyone, it's that time of season. Everyone's in a better mood. Everyone has more time to go see it multiple times in theaters. I mean, our asses. I'm seeing it twice within 12 hours. I mean, I'm going to see it launch night Thursday and then turn around the next morning before noon. I'm going to see it again in IMAX, and I have another screening planned for the week after that. So it's just like you were saying. I mean, to follow the formula here, we should get Solo in 18, 9 and 19, the standalone in 20, or now the 20 slot could potentially be Ryan's first movie. I mean, that would still be enough time to get one done.
Yeah, it definitely could be. And
that's a 3 full years. I mean, he could do it.
Yeah, and we also we have to think about where he's starting from, because if he really is starting from nothing, crafting a story.
Yeah, I mean, writing the writing alone will take a year.
Yeah, so it's not like he's got this shit ready to go from what we can see, at least with this announcement.
It doesn't sound like it, right? Because I mean, they didn't give us any details. I mean, when I hear the word blank canvas, to me that's Kathleen in the story group basically going, we may give you guys some notes, or we may attach ourselves to your writing process, or look over your notes and provide revisions, but have fun.
Yeah.
I mean, what it's Ryan and his partner Ram Bergman or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
are going to be the main writers. Which, I mean, the story group has to be involved.
Oh yeah, I mean they're not gonna. I mean, I think after seeing what's happened with Colin Trevorrow and what's happened with the Lord, Phil Lord and Chris Miller, or Flip It, whichever it is. I feel like they're going to definitely be interested in trying to keep up with what's happening in the writing room in the early stages, just to make sure shit didn't go sideways after this, after they made this announcement. But I feel like, they have faith in him and they really trust him to do, right by it. So what I think is Ryan probably laid out a really kind of framework storyline with some bare bones characters to them, not even specific to an era, not even specific to any specific anything in the universe. Just I want to tell a story about this, and then after seeing The Last Jedi, Kathleen Kennedy and the story group were like, dude, let him do it, let him go.
Yeah,
for
they're
it.
Okay, sounds good to us. So, Nick, that brings us to the next point of this discussion, which I think is the meat and the most interesting, is what what story? I mean, I don't want to put it that way. I guess what time frame do you want these stories to focus on? And let's break it down. I think there are 3 eras we could do. We could do the Old Republic, right? Way back, like thousands of years prior to even the prequels. We could return to the prequel era, because I do believe there are plenty of great stories to tell, and you could use this as a way to sort of amend the prequel movies. Not change them, because they still exist. They're never going to be remade. But you could kind of add, like, attach stories to them that kind of intersect with the main people, and maybe provide some of that backstory that a lot of us wanted from the prequels that we didn't get. And then, as Nick said, I think you have the far forward stuff, the even past Rey's timeline.
Yeah.
I mean, there's also that gap in between 6 and 7. So I guess there's 4 areas. I don't think they're gonna touch the original trilogy era, because that's already had Rebels to cover some of that.
They've had Rogue One. They've had Han Solo
One.
now.
Right. So I think that's good. But I do think you got the Old Republic. I think you got the prequel. You got the time between Jedi and Force. And then you have post Episode 9. So I think you have 4 timelines. So what would, right at the top of your head, number 1?
For me, it's Old Republic. It's always been Old Republic for me, even like when George had it, because I read a lot of the Old Republic books. I played the Old Republic video games. I played the Old Republic MMO. I loved that era because it was the only time in Star Wars history that we had where the Jedi and the Sith and the dark side versus the light side wasn't completely built around like political leanings and like, this faction runs the galaxy and this one is destitute and shoved off into the corner. The Old Republic was like when both factions were powerful and were strong, and there was open war between the Jedi and the Sith, and it just the amount of amazing kind of battles you could get out of this, the amount of storylines that you could tell with intriguing Force users that are in a similar position to somebody like Kylo, who's kind of like in between this, like, I'm not a bad person like Sith are, but I don't want to have this narrow point of view like Jedi do. So like to me, I feel like that would be just top notch, because it's never been explored before in any sort of cinematic or TV way. And to me, like, having those massive Sith versus Jedi, battles, or, just the ongoing war between the two factions would be incredible to see on a big screen.
Oh, I agree. I mean, and I think just reading the Twitterverse or Instagram, Facebook, I think a lot of people were kind of Old Republic. There's one guy that I respect. He writes for Game Informer. Andrew Reiner did a piece on the trilogy should not be in the Old Republic, though. So, I mean, just with anything Star Wars, you're always going to have kind of a 50-50 take here from Fanboy Nation. Some are going to be yes, some are going to be no. I'm kind of like Nick. I think there's a ton of interesting material from the Old Republic. I don't think they would introduce any characters that have been established in legend stuff, like the actual game, Knights of the Old Republic. I don't think Malik and Revan would be involved.
No, more
especially with the language they used in the announcement that it's going to be brand new this and brand new parts of the galaxy. So I don't think it's going to focus on core worlds that we've known before. But again, that's why the Old Republic era could really open things up. I mean,
exactly.
We could hang around Korriban or do stuff like that you've seen in the games, but aren't really mentioned that much in the modern Star Wars lore that we've gotten.
Yeah, I mean, you have so many incredible planets that were explored in these video games and in these books and stuff like that. And like you said, it's all legends now considered. It's all considered legends, but. We've seen things from Legends be pulled back. Thrawn, for example, was pulled back from Legends and then reinserted into new canon. And then, to me, with Old Republic, what it gives you is unlimited space not like space where they're flying in the ships, but unlimited space to work within, your creative realm. Even if, so say we did take like the next biggest time period where we have a gap, whereas, which is that period between episode 6 and 7, like that's a pretty large chunk. You're still held within bounds of existing characters and then canon on both sides, which you kind of need to fit within. So while I do believe that that's probably like the second best place to do it, because you would get to see like, the creation of Luke's Jedi Academy, the training of new Jedi again, the formation of the New Republic and shit like that. And then you could also see like the machinations of the dark side starting to kind of work in the background. It puts too many boundaries on what he would want to do.
Well, I mean, what you're saying, I think it's a great point, actually, is even if they do approach that at era, which I believe is 39 years worth of time, they would be held to those constraints. Like, they would have to mention the politics of the world. Even if they're trying to build all brand new characters, they would still have to live within the scope of the universe that has already been presented to everybody. So they would have to have dialogue talking about Han and Leia and Luke and what they did, or, hey, this Luke guy's doing this academy, but they couldn't show that because that's not what this trilogy is going to be about. So I think that's another point for the Old Republic, because as Nick said, it is wide open. It is the Wild West in terms of Star Wars storytelling.
Oh yeah, I mean it's free, and I mean, I don't know how much Rian Johnson.
You're not constrained by anything, right?
Nothing.
There's you
nothing.
do whatever you want outside of. Hell, you could even make fucking orange-colored lightsabers.
Oh yeah, dude! Like anything that, like you said, it's the Wild West. You could do anything you want. You could, like, if you go back to the Old Republic, since there is no established canon that functions within that space. I mean, like, not even any real characters outside of like Darth Plagueis, but he's not even really like Old Republic. He's just kind of like pre-prequel era, like 20 to 40 years right there. If you go way back, like, you can create your own planets, you can create your own societies, you can create your own like races of character, like everything is open to you.
How about this? I was just thinking about this, just based on what we think we know about The Last Jedi in terms of, Luke going to the original Jedi temple, and we've seen those books, which could be, the Journal of the Wills or like the Jedi Bible. What if Rian plans on telling those stories?
Oh man, that would be beautiful.
Right?
Because that's the exact setting that I want.
Because it's wide open in terms of the stories they could tell, but it also has a direct tie to what we all love. And let's be honest, we're all here for the Skywalker saga first and foremost. I mean, that's what created this whole thing in the first place. So if he could create stories set way, way, way back when, now I'm talking like we're on Octo, but it is populated with early Jedi, and we're seeing that type of stuff. That's what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, I mean, original canon had it going back all the way to the discovery of the Force, like to when the Force was found, not like when the people first started to make lightsabers. I mean, it went all the way back. So, I mean, if Rian wants to function within that space, and like you said, with that segue already kind of being built into this new trilogy, that would be...
I think it's perfect.
Yeah, it would be. I mean, you would have, depending on how he wants to do it, what you could have is a trilogy that is about, the Force first being discovered, the Force first being used, and then the splintering between the dark side and the light side. And then you find, there's a lot of great space for this to happen in.
Lucasfilm Story Group, hit me up. Hit me up. These ideas just come to me. I know you probably already are thinking of them, but that's how this mind works. I think there's a lot of potential there, because in the end, Nick, what do we all want? While I think most of us, and I'm sure you saw it in your feeds too, there's people out there going like, oh no, Disney's raping Star Wars, oversaturation, yada yada yada. But in the end, I'll take it as much as I can get. But I still believe for these types of projects to be successful, they have to have some sort of carrot or tie to the Skywalker saga. Because, like I said, that is the genesis of the universe. That's why we all love it. That's why we all came to it in the first place. So I think, and even like they've done in the one standalone, I mean, it was easy to do in Rogue One. I mean, shit, they pulled it right from the crawl of A New Hope, and they even had Leia in it, by the way.
Yeah.
To make that tie, I think we're gonna get ties in Solo back to I mean, Solo himself and Lando and Chewie. So I do think while Ryan has been given a blank slate, I think it's still going to be with the intention of these stories, these three stories, the characters and the worlds you create are going to have to somehow tie back into the Skywalker Saga universe.
Even in the smallest way, yeah.
Right, even in a way I said, just setting up Episode 8's location of, oh, wow, now, yeah, in Episode 8 we see what this island looks like thousands of years prior to what we saw in Ryan's trilogy.
Dude, you know what would be great? I'm just like seeing this in my mind right now is if we get like this isn't going to happen because like it would be too cheesy and too obvious, but like if we get we've seen the overhead shots of Acto a lot of times in the trailers. What would be great is if we saw that overhead shot from Episode 8 and then you get the fade into the past, and then just people are populating it, like you're saying, like people are walking around, people are coming in and out of temples and stuff like that.
They're robed up, they're like floating in Buddha poses, and rocks are floating all over the place.
Dude, I mean, like shit like that would be perfect. And I mean,
what if they have like a little baby Yoda, they're holding them?
Oh man, dude, you know what would be hilarious? I mean, Yoda was what, 800 years old? 900 years old. Yeah, I mean, he could be around. He could still be there, dude. If you don't go back far enough, or if you go back, around that amount of time. He'd
be all spry, like running around.
You see the birth of Yoda is the first fucking shot.
Yoda and Yaddle.
Oh man, dude, that would be hilarious. But
so, I mean, I think it's pretty clear where we kind of want this trilogy to go.
Yeah.
Making a case for the prequel era. Like I said, I think they could do it in a way without directly referring or, changing the prequels as they stand. But they could do it in a way to where they could peel more of those onion layers back that we didn't get as far as, like, the politics of the world and a good story, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Good story, good narratives from the prequel era. Kind of like what the Clone Wars cartoon did.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, there's so many characters in the prequel era. Like, even if he wanted to create a new Jedi as the main character, I mean, you could do that, because in that wartime period, I mean, Jedi were spread across the galaxy, as we saw with Order 66. I mean, like, not everybody was on Coruscant, not everybody was in the core worlds, fighting the Separatists. Like, They were spread across the galaxy. So if you wanted to work within that prequel era to give more context to what was going on, add to the story, you could create a new Jedi main character, have him off on one of the, on one of the Outer Rim planets or something like that. And then you would have more space to work with than if you were to try to to insert him right into the fray, like have him be like a Coruscant presence to where he's on the council or something like that. There's ways you could do it. It would be difficult because you would have so many like red lines you couldn't cross. Like, okay, well, you can't bring in Obi-Wan Kenobi anywhere. He can't be there.
I don't think any of them can be seen. I'm talking like they can only be heard in conversation. Like, let's say we are following just some random Jedi, and he's with his master, and he'd be like, "Oh, did you hear what Kenobi and Skywalker did today in that battle? And man, that Skywalker guy, geez, I mean, his power is so insane. I can't believe he's not master." And just kind of painting some pictures behind the scenes of how people portrayed the stars of the prequel, like how they were projecting, like what did other people think of Anakin?
Yeah.
In the Order. I mean, what did other people think of Obi in the Order? Hell, Nick, we're sitting here, we've already made the conclusion that this trilogy is going to be about Force people. It doesn't have to be.
No, it doesn't.
I mean, we technically, you could say Rogue One didn't feature the Force at all. I mean, I know they talked about the Kyber crystals and it was sort of like Jin's quasi-religion and the same as Chirrut and Baze, but we didn't see the Force in action. It was just people talking about it.
Yeah.
I think I'm hoping this trilogy involves the Force and how people use it either for the light or the dark. But it doesn't technically have to be a trilogy about Jedi or Sith or whatever you want to call those people, depending on what time frame or era this is going to be set in.
Yeah, I agree. It could be about, it could be about the regular people of the Star Wars galaxy. It could be about, the people who are working like soldiers in a way, like you said, with Rogue One. I mean, there's a lot of different things that you could focus on. But I think, I guess it's become such an ingrained and such a beloved part of Star Wars lore that like Force.
I do. That's what I mean. I think it's far fetched to think that the Force would not be brought up in this new trilogy or be a main component of it. But I'm just saying, it technically doesn't have to be. But I do believe the better stories are where the Force exists and the characters we're following believe in it or use it in some form or fashion.
Yeah, exactly. So to me, my top two are, give me Old Republic way over everything else, and then if Ryan feels like he could work within that period, I think between 6 and 7 would be good. Those are my top two spots.
Yeah, I think they're the easiest ones to go for. I do think, because I think there's probably language in the contract. I mean, I think 1 through 6 are pretty much
untouchable.
Yeah. And there's really not much you could do in those without heavily relying on the events of 1 through 6.
Yeah, exactly.
And just the way they frame this press release, it sounds like we're getting something brand spanking new. Although I do think Nick and I's points of we're all about that. We would love to see brand new something Star Wars. I do think whatever it is brand new still has to tie itself into this Skywalker saga somehow, even if it's a casual nod. But fans are going to have to be able to relate these new characters and new worlds to the existing franchise.
Yeah, and then like if you just think about the process behind creating the story for Episode 8, like Ryan essentially had to create a second story before even making Episode 8, because that was something that Mark Hamill talked a lot about. He's like, he goes into this movie and he thinks he knows who Luke Skywalker is, and then he finds out like what's supposed to happen in this film and the mindset, and he basically had to go to Ryan and be like, okay, you need to walk me through what happened. So Ryan is very adept at like creating stories that aren't already, established by the story group or something like that. Like he's good at filling in this blank space to give people perspective into what is going on at certain times and what's happening and how people got where they are. So I think he'll do a great job. And I really just hope that the announcement comes soon to at least like when it's going to happen, but we'll see. Probably not.
Yeah, I think at this point, and I'm surprised we even got that now. This is something I think they may want to hold close to their vest till after The Last Jedi comes out. But hey, I guess like we started the cast, they have ultra confidence in Rian Johnson. So here we go. All right, dude. So the next major revelation we got, and again, people, these all came from a Disney. What was their financial conference call or whatever? Iger was just kind of dropping bombs on people's faces. But the next big thing that we learned is that Disney is moving forward with its own streaming platform. I don't know if everyone's been aware of that, but that's been talked about for weeks now, and it basically means Netflix is losing all Disney properties. I mean, they're not going to be able to stream Rogue One anymore. The Marvel series, I think they'll keep those. It's not like they're going to disappear from the platform. Like Jessica Jones and Daredevil, but shit like Rogue One or the Clone Wars, a lot of that stuff is going to be pulled and put on Disney's own streaming service. But to make the deal even more enticing, Nick, they revealed this week that they're shooting for a live-action TV series on the platform by 2019.
Yeah, live-action Star Wars, baby. We've heard about it. We've
for years.
Dreamed
I mean,
about it.
Years. I think we could even say decades at this point.
Yeah, because I mean, I remember going back. I mean, pre-2010, like.
Yeah, I think it was around Revenge of the Sith time when things were coming to an end and people were asking George, all right, well, what's next? And I think he's like, we'll do some TV and some cartoons. We got the Clone Wars out of it. But I do believe the genesis for a live-action Star Wars came during the development and the end of Revenge of the Sith. So 12 years at least.
Yeah, so it was such a hard concept to envision at the time, I guess. But like you said, what can be done in cartoons could also be done in live action. But it was like, I remember people thinking back then, it's like, we've only ever seen live action Star Wars on the big screen. And it's
well,
only
Mick, think about the landscape of entertainment consumption in 2005.
Oh, yeah.
There was no streaming services. There's no Netflix. There's none of that. So I think it was hard to think about, well, what network, right? Because we were still, back then it was like, well,
if you're not
is it going to be a cable show? Is it going to be an air show? I mean, who's going to pick this up? But now with the success of all these streaming platforms and people seeing what Netflix has been able to do with original content, it does make projects like this much easier to consider and execute.
Oh, yeah. Infinitely
especially when you
easier.
Control your own fucking platform like Disney.
Yeah, I mean, like, they don't have to worry about fucking, Fox or whatever canceling their show because, the first 3 weeks wasn't impressive enough in terms of numbers.
They don't have to share profits with anyone. I mean, it's all their shit. They're going to create the content and distribute it.
Yeah.
Where that ecosystem did not exist back when this concept was first being talked about.
Yeah, not even close. So, I mean, and this is another interesting thing. So we're talking about live action Star Wars, and when you're talking about live action Star Wars TV show, again, you're working in a dangerous area because you have a lot of characters that have been established in this universe already. So if you pick a time, this is what was important with Rian Johnson's new trilogy is also very important with this TV show. If this TV show is set in a period of time where you're working even in the same area as already established canon and already established characters, it can be very dangerous. So, like, you really have to be careful with where you're positioning this show, who these characters are, and what their affiliations are with characters that are already established, if there are any. Like, it's really kind of... I love that it's happening.
Dude, it has to follow the formula of Star Wars Rebels.
You think so?
I'm not saying it has to be set in that period. I'm just saying it has to follow the formula. Where in Rebels, I don't think the live action has to go as far as Rebels did in terms of connecting to people we know. I mean, Princess Leia shows up in an episode. Wedge shows up in an episode. Mon Mothma, Akbar. But I think if we just look at the core cast of Rebels, they're all new people. But two of them are Force sensitive. One's tied to the Mandalores. I guess what I'm saying is that the characters were all fresh and new, but they all had ties to existing stuff that we were familiar with, which I think is why it was which is why it's so successful.
Yeah,
and why people bought into those characters. I mean, they weren't Luke, Leia, and Han, but they were believable in terms of being in the same space as those characters.
Yeah.
And in the same world, in the same universe. So I do think that this live-action TV show is probably going to be prequel or original trilogy set.
See, to me, this is the one that I think would work well between 6 and 7 because you could do it. To me, you could pull this one off
you're right.
easy.
Okay, yeah, you're right because that's still territory that is fresh, right? I mean, there are stories to be told there where the prequel era and the original trilogy era at this point, a lot of stories have been told, especially if you've watched all the Clone Wars, all 6 seasons. If you watched all 3.5 seasons into 4 of Rebels. Of course, if you watched the prequel movies and the original trilogy. A lot of stories been told there. Rogue One, we're getting Solo. We may get Kenobi. So all those stories are going to be from that era. So, no, you're right. You win. I'm with you. I think that is the most ripe time period to tell some stories while making casual nods to the overall Skywalker saga, which I said it would be key even in Rian Johnson's trilogy movie. I do think even in this TV show, like the cartoons have done, you kind of have to throw those little nuggets
Yeah.
back to the Skywalker saga just to kind of tie everything together.
I mean, if you think about the time period that they're talking about for release as well, you know, Bob Iger says the Star Wars universe would be expanding with a live-action TV show, which would be available on Disney's streaming service, which is set to launch in 2019. So if that's one of their release offerings, 2019 live-action Star Wars TV show, you're talking about that show would be coming out right when the new trilogy ends. Like either before, like a couple of months before Episode 9 releases, or it could release right after. And what that would do is like, okay, we've given you this entire trilogy, this entire storyline with these new characters. Now let's fill you in on what happened right before we got here. And
yeah, no, I'm all for that. I mean, I'm just thinking now, I think this is way far-fetched, but what if they continue the stories through TV?
They could. I mean, that's also a possibility. I mean, we have to see who would be left and like what characters, if any characters, would be able to be transitioned to a TV screen. Because I don't know, like obviously, like you're not going to transition Rey, Kylo, Poe.
Right.
And,
yeah. I'm not saying
happen.
like the big guys, like they don't come back and they're regulars on the show, but maybe they have an appearance here or there, or they plop in, or the stories being told are based on how those characters leave the Skywalker trilogy by the end of Episode 9.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? I mean, if we're gonna like speculating, is what I'm gonna do right now, just to like kind of say what could happen. But like, if we do get a situation to where things kind of come back down to a normal or to like some sort of equilibrium, like they did in episodes at the end of Episode 6. And say we have Kylo and Rey left, and they're like, all right, we're going to reestablish the Jedi, or like we're going to not a Jedi Academy, but like we're going to create a school of Force users, and we're not going to teach them like Jedi, and we're not going to teach them like Sith. We're going to teach them in this new way, like whatever this new archetype is that's being created with this new trilogy. This is how we want our Force users to be trained, because we think that this is the way to train people, so you don't get these wild divisions every 30 years or whatever happens. You're not going to get a dark side versus light side war that's going to rip apart the galaxy every so often. So you set that up, and then the TV show would be in that academy. But I mean, like, you could have other teachers, you could have other trainers, maybe the first episode features, Daisy Ridley and Adam Driver in some way just to set up, but then like after that, it's kind of handed off to the new cast.
I mean, like I said, I think that's a long shot, but it is a potential.
Yeah.
So I think you're either going to have the time frame between 6 and 7 or post 9. I think those are the most ripe territories for storytelling. Although if it goes back to some of the original thoughts, I do believe that they wanted it set. Was it going to be set in the prequel era, basically on Coruscant, but the underbelly of Coruscant, where all like the seedy shit goes down?
Yeah, I mean, essentially that TV show was going to be what Star Wars 1313, the video game, was supposed to be. Like, if people remember that.
Yeah, I think they were calling it Star Wars Underworld at one point, right?
Yeah. So it's kind of that. It's like I think your main character was going to be a bounty hunter who functions within the underworld of Coruscant. Yeah, and then like he's he obviously, I mean, within that series that they were talking about, would have entanglements with the Jedi. Probably not your main
right.
Jedi
So I mean,
cast,
it goes back to what I've been saying. I mean, I think that's the way to do it. Is create all these new people, but have them at least interact with the existing world and characters. Not maybe talk face to face with the famous actors, but if you are playing a bounty hunter, you get something over the HoloNet like, hey, Anakin Skywalker just did this, or blah blah blah, Luke Skywalker just did that. Just throw out the mentions, or Rey just did that, or Kylo just did that. I really think for these to resonate with people, like the cartoons, they have to have those nods and ties to the Skywalker sagas.
Yeah. But I mean, just to know that like Disney, I mean, we already knew that Disney was all in, but like to introduce
they were all in.
Yeah, they're like, look, baby, this is our business now. We're in the Marvel and we're in the Star Wars business because business is booming. So we're going to keep that shit going for a while.
So I guess as we kind of wind things up, let's talk about that real quick. Are you someone that is fearful of stuff like this, of Disney kind of just rolling out Star Wars one year after another? Or are you someone that's like, hey, the more the merrier?
Trust me, dude. I'll watch Star Wars to the day I die. No matter how often it gets put out. But being from the video game world, like both of us are, like we've seen franchise fatigue hit really, really popular shit hard. Like hard. Like Call of Duty just like falls off a cliff after, X amount of years. Like, and then same thing that happened to Assassin's Creed, dude. Like there was a 3-game stretch where like Assassin's Creed was just like not doing great. And I feel like for us, it's never going to be old. Like for people like us who have lived and breathed Star Wars since like we could really, perceive storyline and understand the messages behind it. Like it's never really gonna like go away for us. But
I'm the same way, dude. Just keep shoving it down my throat. I mean, at this point, they've been doing it with Marvel since 2006. So, they're 11 years in of just shitting out at least 2 Marvel movies a year.
Yeah.
I just saw Thor for the second time, and it's still great. Like, I'm still excited about seeing Marvel movies for the next 5 years or whatever. So, sure, I'm going to be excited for more Star Wars. I don't get... It's not like Disney has given us a reason to be scared yet or fearful of what they're going to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like we haven't had like an Iron Man 3 come out yet. I know like a lot of people love Iron Man 3. It was the worst of the trilogy. Okay, let's be real here. But like you're right. They haven't given us any reason to say, maybe slow down a little bit. But I would like to see like some sort of temperance once they notice some fatigue starting to set in. Like I'm sure they have people that are actively monitoring like box offices. They're monitoring buzz and stuff like that. They're really kind of keeping their finger on the pulse to make sure that they don't go overboard here. And right now, like the world is in a Star Wars frenzy. I mean, we've had 2 movies come out since the acquisition. They've both done incredibly well. And then obviously you've had Rebels running that's going to be wrapping up soon. I mean, everything is fucking, turn it up to 11 for Star Wars right now. But then, what if we get 5 years down the line and they start to see like, okay, box office has dipped maybe 10%, how are they going to deal with that? Are they going to say, fuck it, keep going? Or are they going to say like, okay, maybe we stagger releases a little bit. Maybe we put it on ice for a year and then come out with it fresh again. We'll have this TV series running in the background the whole time. So you have the content that's still there, but maybe you just like pull back a little bit on your wide releases. So yeah, dude, I mean, I'm down. Give me it full throttle until I croak. But I really do think that at some point Disney's going to need to evaluate their release schedule based on like, the wider audience's sentiment.
Yeah, well, only time will tell, and the almighty dollar will decide everything in the end.
Disney's got plenty of those dollars. We just heard a report fucking earlier this week that they were like, you know what, we're just going to buy 20th Century Fox so we can have all the Marvel characters.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, there's a part of me that I don't like huge media conglomerates because then they can start controlling stories, especially on the news side of the media. But I don't think Fox losing the Marvel rights, which would be X-Men, Wolverine, and Fantastic Four, right?
Yeah.
That fine. Disney can have those, but
I mean, they weren't even gonna buy just the characters. They were gonna buy the whole fucking studio. Like they were gonna buy Fox. Like they were gonna buy 20th Century Fox, not just the Marvel side. They were gonna buy the whole thing, just to get the Marvel characters.
Yep.
Like that's the kind of money that Disney has right now. So that they're not worried about it. Like they're like if they don't care and like they will just say, we run this shit until we run it into the ground.
I mean, and they've done a good job with everything. I'm just worried, like, what if they end up with, say, rights to Deadpool? Are they going to put out an R-rated Disney movie? Has there ever been an R-rated Disney movie?
No.
That's the shit that concerns me.
Yeah. You see, like, that's definitely the more dangerous side of it. Like, I think if something like that were to happen, then you need to kind of split the studios. Like, you'll have the Disney production studios, and then you'll have, I mean, who knows? Maybe they keep the Fox name and then they just own it to be able to use the characters, but like they'll have that division to where, like, okay, this is,
it'd just be
Disney
funny
stuff,
seeing like the
stuff.
Disney splash come up before Deadpool, and like
yeah.
someone gets their brains blown out right through it. Or...
Yeah, that would be great. But yeah, people, Disney is, I mean,
they're not screwing around.
No.
And this week definitely proved that. I mean, they dropped 2 massive bombs strategically, mind you. I mean, he dropped those bombs on that call on purpose. That's basically him pounding his chest like, we own. And we're going to continue to own for years to come because we have the Star Wars and the Marvel rights, and we're just going to make movies every single year, whether you like it or not, but we know you like it. So here they come.
Yep.
All right, dude. Well, I think we kind of hit the big stuff. We got the people educated on what they may have missed. I mean, obviously, if you're a Star Wars fan, you probably didn't miss those, but we wanted to provide a few more insights and obviously do our little speculation dance on what these projects could entail. And so just to kind of sum things up, we want the new trilogy to be set during the Old Republic, but we think it could also work within 3 other time frames if they had to. And as far as the live-action TV show goes, we would love to see it be featured and tell stories from the time period that took place at the end of Return of the Jedi up to the beginning of The Force Awakens. Did I miss anything, Nick? Anything you want to add, plug, or say?
I think that's it. We hit it. We'll listen to the cast, download it, share it with your friends. And
yes, please. We say that all the time, but you can get us on iTunes, Stitcher, Android, Google Play. We are out there. Just search the best podcast for Star Wars fans and pop culture geeks, and you will find it. I promise you. The internets know who we are. All right, people. May the Force be with you always.